All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our virtual Green Fair. I am Lisa, and I am part of the Environmental Commission and the Green Team. Today it is my pleasure to introduce Doreen Frega, the Outreach Director of Animal Protection League of New Jersey, and Angie Metler, the Director of Animal Protection League of New Jersey, and their program is part of the Bear Group. So with that, I'm going to turn the meeting over to them.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to just share the screen. Hi.
Thank you.
And let me just, okay. Hi, as Lisa said, my name is Angie Metler. I'm with the Animal Protection League of New Jersey, and the Bear Group is a program of Animal Protection League of New Jersey. And we were founded back in 1983, and the Bear Group, our program was founded in 1992. We're here to help the public and to also bring different ideas, because we have found through our work that most people have a great affinity for animals. And sometimes they just need a little information. Sometimes they need a little bit of information about wildlife rehabilitation. And sometimes our public officials just want to know what to do in certain situations that involve wildlife. And that's what we're here for. We work with legislators, and we work on legislation, and we always try to provide win-win solutions when animal conflicts arise. And they do arise, and that's why we're here. So I'm going to take us forward. Oh, why is my, okay. Our mission is primarily education in nature. We give presentations, some like tonight, on black bears, Canada geese, on white-tailed deer. We also have programs for community cats and compassionate eating programs. Our black bear program is primarily focuses on the true nature of the bear. And bears often get into trouble because of what people think they may do, not because of what they actually do. And we found the same about Canada geese. When people find out a few different things about Canadian geese, we can help raise the tolerance level for geese. And deer, who've been coexisting with forests for 3.5 million years, are a very interesting species. And we're here to provide whatever we can on community cats and also compassionate eating guides, which is pro-environment, pro-animal, and pro-human health. Let's start with bears. There's something about bears in New Jersey everybody knows. Most people love them. Most people haven't seen a wild bear. I happen to have the wonderful pleasure of living up in Sussex County, New Jersey, where I see bears walking through the forest because my house backs up to Wayanda State Park. And I do see bears usually on garbage day, but what a sight. I've lived up here for 2 decades, and it doesn't get old. Bears are, let's start, they're great environmentalists. They live in parts of the state that have wonderful mountains and trees and the environment to sustain them. And they protect plants from insects and disease because they often eat the larvae of insects, such as the eastern tent caterpillars that destroy plants. And bear scat, we see it all over the place up here, is a wonderful fertilizer. Bears are just, amazing environmentalist. Their diet, most people would be very surprised that they are primarily vegetarian. They are opportunistic omnivores. And what does that mean? Well, if they come across insects under a tree that has fallen in the woods, they will eat the insects. If they come across an animal who has, perished, they may eat that animal, but primarily they live on berries and on garbage. unfortunately, but we're here to prevent people from feeding bears garbage. Their natural lifespan is about 20 to 33 years. I actually knew a bear named Samantha who passed away from the ripe old age of 31. How did we know that? She was collared. She was a collared bear. And what does that mean? They put a collar around the bear's neck and they do telemetry on this black bear. And she lived in our neighborhood in the woods, and she would come out every now and then, and she lived a very long life. And that is our hope for all bears, to live to their natural lifespan. They typically are very slow reproducers. They have cubs every 2 years, sometimes every 4 years. They generally don't start having babies until they're 3. And in some parts of the United States, they don't start until they're 11 years old. And that's because bears reproduce based on the food supply and the available habitat. They have wonderful senses. They see in color. How do we know that? Well, Dr. Lynn Rogers has studied bears for nearly 40 years. He knows everything about them, and he's taught us everything we know about black bears. In fact, we took a course up in Minnesota with him, and he's quite the delight. And he has bears all around, and it was just so wonderful to be around them like that. Hearing is the bear's first line of defense. They're always looking because they act more like prey than predator. They have a first-rate ability to smell. Silly me, I went to a yard sale and I was carrying blueberry and peanut butter, blueberry jelly and peanut butter sandwiches in my pack. And I saw this bear walking up the street with his nose in the air because he could smell my blueberries. So I quickly put the blueberries away and he went back into the woods. They have a long-term memory. Bears recognize the people that they have met. They recognize hikers in the woods. They have, and they do act really more like prey animals. They live in fear. I can go like this and scare a bear. The bears live in dens. In the summer, they have day dens, and in the winter, they are hibernating in their dens, and they're made in the early fall. They are seldom used more than once because they are very wary. So they're always worried about, where they are, and in a protective kind of way. And dens, a very important thing to note about the dens, they're not much bigger than the bear because otherwise there would be too much air around the bear and they could freeze. So the cubs, how long? The cubs are with their moms up to 2 years. Most of the time it's about 18 months. And she teaches them everything, how to climb a tree, how to escape danger, how to get food, and how to build a den. Although cubs have been known to build dens on their own at 4 months of age. Here's a mother bear keeping her cubs safe.
Hey, so traffic obviously is annoying, but we've got a couple of traffic highway hazards that may surprise you. Now watch this incredible piece of video. A mama bear saves her young cub on highway. That's right. After the little cub had wandered onto a highway in British Columbia, Canada. Look at
Oh my
this.
goodness. Look like she's looking both ways
Okay,
first.
I get you.
See? She's looking both ways.
Gotcha. You're gonna get it when I get you home.
And your bear is gonna have the sails in the same direction.
Come on.
We just love this video because it does show Mama Bear being very, very protective of her cubs. And she's smart too. A lot of bears in New Jersey do get hit by cars, but that's not because of the bears. It's because drivers are not being safe. And we encourage people in bear country, to be very safe. Drive slowly, especially in the evening. And here's let me just pause this for a second. This video shows you how a cat can chase a bear and make a bear run. Oh, let me go back. All right, how do I? you know, let me go back. I love this video. It just, I've actually seen this in my neighborhood. When I first moved up to bear country 20 years ago, I've seen turkeys chase bears. I've seen bears jump when they see a chipmunk. It's remarkable how many animals do wind up chasing the bear. The next animal, I'm just going to show you a couple of things, a couple of our programs. I know that this was billed as a bear resource presentation, and I apologize, but I was thinking this was a virtual tabling event, and we do have other information about animals, and I hope you can find this interesting as well. And if anybody wants more information about bears, we do have a much larger presentation that's about 45 minutes just on bears, and we'd be happy to give that presentation for you. Another animal that comes up in the news often is geese. And geese, and I'm talking about Canadian geese, and their lifespan is about 24, 30 years of age. They live that long. And the average in the wild is about 12. And that's because the habitat destruction is also because of hunting that occurs in the state. And it's also because of the USDA that comes in and does roundups, but I won't go into that right now. They do mate for life. However, I saw a Nat Geo presentation a few years ago that said they sometimes cheat on each other. So I don't know what that's about, but they're highly social, highly emotional animals. We have seen them mourn the loss of their young. They have strong parental instincts, and they stay as a unit for quite some time, sometimes for life. Their navigation, I'm sure everyone's seen the V form, but what you may not know is that the females lead the V form, and the males protect up in the rear. They can travel 24 hours a day, and they use landmarks that they've come to know. They've got very good memory, and stars, and they often can travel thousands of miles during their flight. Many years ago, farmers always used geese. They would put out the geese in the maize field, the cornfields, to clean up all the corn that has fallen over the summer, over the growing period. So geese can be a really good friend to farmers, and their drop-ins are nutrients to the soil and add lots of it helps with plant diversity, adds lots of nutrients. And people often think of geese poop, in a park. We like to think of geese poop in a natural setting where it can provide nutrients to the soil to help the environment. They're also recyclers. Nests that other birds leave behind, you can find geese going in there. They also use human things like barges to lay their eggs. They're very close to the water. They have to be very close to the water in order to do that. Their diet is primarily vegetarian as well, but they are opportunistic feeders. They will eat fish. But they are primarily vegetarian. Their temperament, geese sometimes get a bad rep because they tend to be very vocal, very social, very loud. But when they're treated with kindness, they're very gentle, and they remember when people are gentle to them. And so why do we see geese? Why are they here? Well, we have a big welcome mat throughout most of New Jersey. And what do I mean by that? We have created these parks with big lawns, big grazing areas where they can see, where they have a clear line of sight to the water, which is their protection. So when we do this, when geese are up in the flyway flying from Canada to Mexico, they see all of these big, vast areas of land and suitable habitat, and they land, and sometimes they stay. It's our job to try to get people to recognize that geese belong in the flyway and to keep them moving. And that's what we're trying to do through our educational program, and try to prevent geese from nesting and becoming residents. And the other animal, one of the wildlife that we like to protect, very much maligned, is deer, our white-tailed deer. They live about 25 years in captivity, but only 4.5 years in New Jersey. And there are a number of reasons for that. Sometimes a lot is traffic accidents. Mostly they're killed in hunting, because they are considered a cash crop for hunters in New Jersey. Their diet is herbivorous. They are vegetarian. In fact, they're vegan. Their habitat is forest edge. That's why we see them on the sides of the forest. They tend to, because they live on the edge, the hunters have learned that if they modify the habitat to be suitable for deer, we can actually increase the deer population by doing that. And how do they do that? They do logging, they do prescribed burns, they do things like plant food crops, and they do clear cutting, so they can create more deer habitat to increase the population. They're typically very nervous and shy, and it's been well documented during hunting season that they hide and they try to get closer to people's homes, which they know are in the buffer zone. So they're very smart and intelligent. And after the hunt ends during deer season, they look for each other. So it's remarkable. They're a remarkable species. They typically mate in the second year. It is unusual for deer to have more than one fawn per year. If you see a doe having more than one fawn, it's usually because they're in a hunted area, because as the population is reduced, there is fewer competition for food and fewer competition for habitat. So after a hunt, they typically have twice the food supply, twice the habitat. So then they have more, because they're a self-regulating species. And what does that mean? That means that if they don't have enough food, they will not give birth. The embryos will be absorbed. Fawns typically live with their moms for 1 or 2 years. We've actually seen them go longer in the wild because they are a herd animal. Deer, as I said earlier, they have coexisted with forests for 3.5 million years. They are natural to our forests and they are indigenous to New Jersey. The fun facts about deer is that they change their fur. It's a different color in the winter and it's redder in the summer. It's kind of like camouflage. Fawns lose their spots after a year, and no two fawns have the same spots. I guess most of us probably would know that because no two humans I have freckles. I don't think there are very few people that have the same freckles. Male deer grow new antlers every year. That's a real fun fact because most people think that once they have their set of antlers, that's it. Deer can jump high to their detriment because sometimes they get caught up on fences. So we do encourage people not to use fencing that has spikes. They swim very well. They actually swim across the Hudson and they can run very fast. Deer scat, it's been very well documented, helps to spread seeds and helps with soil enrichment and plantings. When you see a fawn in the grass all by themselves, we do encourage people to keep an eye, but don't go near, because sometimes the fawn was left by the mom and can be left by the mom up to 2 days. The fawns do not have a smell, so predators don't know they're there. So if we make a big to-do, then that could alert some predators. And if you don't see mom after 48 hours, then you should call us or a deer rehabilitator. Because there's been a lot of fawn nappings in New Jersey over the years from well-meaning people who think the fawns have been abandoned by mom. They have excellent vision. Compared to humans, they can see more peripherally. It's a protective mechanism for them. One thing that we're thrilled about is that when people have conflicts with wildlife or with feral cats, we have discovered in our work, and I've been doing this since the early 80s, is that non-lethal is number one. And what do I mean by that? With black bears, we educate the public on how to reduce conflicts. What does that mean? Keep your attractants. Attractants are like bird food, garbage. Keep them all, if you keep them in check, if you use bear-resistant cans up here, you won't see bears. I have a bear-resistant can. Bears have learned that they can't get into my can, so I'm not feeding that bear. And once bears know they can't get a free meal, they'll stay away. And that's very, very important. It reduces incidents and complaints, and it also reduces their population, because when bears are denied access to unnatural food sources, then their population stays stable and actually can be reduced, because if they subsist just on natural foods, they too will reabsorb their embryos and not reproduce. While I love seeing bears, I would give up seeing them if that meant that they would be safe. Canada geese, when we see lots of Canada geese, as I said before, we put out those welcome mats. So the number one solution for geese management is habitat modification. What is that? That can be simple as planting 10 to 15 feet of grass near the water's edge so the geese cannot see a straight line to the water because they are worried about predators. Planting bushes, because they don't know what lurks behind those bushes. And you can avoid certain types of grasses that geese love to eat. There's dozens of other things that we can do to help geese get back up into the flyway and go off to Canada and Mexico as they naturally should. And with white-tailed deer, we have dozens of tools that are available to reduce deer conflicts and the first thing you do is, if you want fewer deer, you shouldn't be hunting them. And that sounds like a conflict in itself or an oxymoron. But as I said earlier, when you remove competition, when you have 10 deer in an area and you remove 5 of them, all of a sudden for the 5 survivors, they have twice the habitat, twice the food supply. Now that's simple. That's a very simple explanation. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's the idea. And we should stop creating food plots, stop doing prescribed burning, stop doing other forest stewardship programs that create deer habitat and stimulate breeding. There's also stop feeding deer. Well-meaning people put out food for deer. No, because we want the population to be in concert with what the environment can sustain. And one of the best things we can do is don't feed wildlife. And our community cat program, we have a website that we created that talks about trap, neuter, and release. And that is the most cost-effective and humane method of managing community cat numbers. When I first got involved with animal work, the only thing that was available to the public was trap and kill. And we've learned that that's not a good way to handle it, because when these colonies are managed by responsible people, then we find that the cat numbers not only drop, but wildlife is protected as well. One of the best things that about the work that we do is meeting new people and meeting new volunteers. We have lots of fun. Our work is very rewarding. It is entertaining at times. One of my favorite things to do is to give presentations like this. You don't have to be an expert. I am not an expert on all wildlife issues, but as long as we work with experts like we do, we can always get the word out. And it's environmental activism is it's a really big topic now in the schools. And it's so important because everything that we can do to make our planet safer for wildlife also makes it safer for us. It's not mutually exclusive. We have to work in concert with the environment. And I think we're learning that. And Doreen Frega is our outreach director, as you were introduced to earlier. You can contact her to get involved. And we have all kinds of things that you can do. We tend to encourage talent. So if you have a particular skill you enjoy, we will encourage you to get involved doing that particular skill. And, you know, our planet and our wildlife and humanity, our fate is in our own hands. Their fate is in our own hands. And when I look at them looking back at me, I had to get involved. I encourage you to get involved if you care about animals, if you care about our planet, and if you care about people, because we're all connected. People always say, what are you doing for people? How are you helping people? Well, did you have a conflict that involved geese? I helped you. So that's my purpose. And here's additional resources, and I welcome any questions that anybody may have. And I hope you enjoyed this short presentation. Lisa?
Thank you, Angie. That was very informative. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you for having us, Lisa. This was a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Angie. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. It's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait. So thank you everyone for coming. Just to thank you, Angie, and thank you, Doreen. That was a great program. Our programs coming up. We have plug-in stations next week, and we have Hawthorne's recycling program, Lyme disease, and unfortunately our fair will be finished with our last presentation is a virtual bird walk. These programs are going to be, you can find the links for the future programs and, oh, wait. You can find the links to our future programs and the recordings and the informations from our previous programs and tonight programs on our website, and you could find about the events on our Facebook page. So if no one has any questions, I want to thank everybody for coming, and again, thank our speakers tonight, and just tell everybody to have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night. Thanks.